So Victor Mayer-Schonberger has written this fantastic book about big data, and all the world is talking big data starting from this book. It was a huge success, meaning that it is a subject that is very important, and we know it is important, but Victor has one way to put it that shows how important it is.
Well, Luca, it's really remarkable. We have gathered as human beings data all through human history. But from 1987 to 2007, the amount of data that we had in the world increased by 100 times. 100 times in 20 years. That's an amazing increase. But that's only half the story. The other half of the story is even more important. In the year 2000, 75% of the data, that is 3/4 of the data, was still analog. Today, less than 1% of the data in the world is analog. The rest is digital. So within 15 years, half a generation, we have moved from an analog world to a digital world. Now, we can look back into history and say, when was the last time that this happened in history, that we amassed so much data? And it was, Elizabeth Eisenstein maintains, 1450 to 1506, when the Gutenberg revolution mushroomed, and particularly in the city-states in Italy, like Venice and elsewhere, the printing presses took hold, and it caused a revolution. It caused the 30-year war. So when we look at it, we are in the midst of this change and shift from analog to digital. What will it do? Well, if we have digital data rather than analog data, we can do something with the data. We can easily collect it, we can easily store it, we can easily analyze it, because we have the tools for that, the computer, the software. We have all of that available, and that means that the cost of doing data manipulations, that doing data analysis, collecting data, goes way down. The cost today is 100 millionth of the cost only 2 generations ago. So that means we can do something with data that we couldn't do before. It also means that we need to think differently, because the last 300 years of scientific revolution and the Enlightenment were based on observing reality and then making sense of it. But because collecting data and analyzing it was so expensive, we collected as little as possible to discover the world. Now we have so much data. And that means we are no more limited to just collecting little amounts of data and squeezing every drop of meaning out of them. Today we can reuse the data over and over again and get a complex rather than a simplified picture of reality. That means we get a new understanding of the world as it is, not as it should be. And that will open new avenues to understanding life that we lead.
And just to make us better understand, give us some examples of what's possible with this.
Well, for example, companies that produce engines on airplanes can now predict when a part in that engine breaks before it breaks, just by using data analysis. The same will soon be done, and actually is already under phase out, under implementation for cars. So in the future, it will be very, very rare that a car breaks down on the side of the road. We will change the part before it breaks. We can probably do something like that with ourselves too, thinking about health. With big data analysis now, researchers in the United States, in Canada actually, have the ability to predict that a prematurely born baby gets an infection, gets an illness, 24 hours before the first symptoms manifest themselves. And they save lives of hundreds and hundreds of babies there that otherwise would have died. So we're having less accidents, we're having better machinery, we're living longer and living better. But this will spread also to education. Consider it for a moment. For hundreds of years, we have been doing the same thing. We have teachers in front and then pupils learning it. And then at the end, we test the pupils. We test the output. But we don't test the process. We don't change the process. We don't have data about how we learn as human beings. This will change. Now we can gather the data on how we learn optimally. There is a startup company called Duolingo that helps you learn languages. And with it, they discovered that the way Spanish speakers learn English is completely wrong. And if you resequence when they're taught what, they learn it much faster and much better. It's all based on data and our ability to understand human cognition and the world much better.
Yeah, that's of course it's fascinating, but we know also that it is done by, as you said, private companies mostly. While we had this public system for statistics, now we have a private system for big data. This leads us to think also about how we think the public sphere of data. What can we do?
Well, it would be a terrible future if big data would just be used by large companies to market their products better to consumers. Big data is a much more powerful and much more useful tool. So what we need to do as a society is to look at how we can harness the power of data for the good of society. In some ways it already works. Data that has been gathered by navigation systems to help people drive from A to B can be reused by public authorities to find out commuting patterns and travel patterns of people to work and back, and thereby helps them tremendously in planning future rail and road networks. We already see big data being used to find out negative side effects of pharmaceutical drugs that didn't exist before. We have data now and data analysis that gives us an almost real-time sense of inflation rates, much earlier than public statistics. But much, much more needs to be done. And what we need to do is to come up with a way by which the data can be utilized. One way to do that is to make sure that the data that is being gathered and stored by government agencies is available for other government agencies, but also for civil society. This is a movement called open data, and it was based on a view of enhancing democracy. But I see it as a view of enhancing our understanding of life, of the world that surrounds us. And in that sense, it's very similar to the scientific revolution. That also required the sharing of knowledge. And we now need the sharing of data. Similarly, we could require companies that receive public subsidies for research, for example, to make some or all of their data public so that others could use it. Or we could also strongly encourage and incentivize the learning of pupils, of students, of data analysis and data analytics, so that they can use the data and do the analysis, and not just the large companies like Google or Facebook or the banks. These are three areas where I think society and government needs to invest.
Well, thank you very much, Victor. It was great.
Thank you.
Thank you.